You know, I think I'm ready for Wind and Truth, but I just can't remember what my favorite character Moash is up to.
Oh no, Sule, that's super disturbing. But you do raise a good point. Before diving into Wind and Truth this winter, we wanted to refresh ourselves on the status of the bad guys of the Stormlight Archive. So let's go over where they are, what their motivations are, and any fun theories we may have for their future. There's a good chance we'll have heavy spoilers for all of the Stormlight Archive novels through Rhythm of War and the entire Mistborn series as well. If you're ready then, let's start with the best. And no, it's not Moash.
We have no interest in seeing the enemy rule this world, Shallan. Master Thaidakar wishes only to secure a method for gathering and transporting Stormlight.
Thaidakar has spent the entirety of his 300-ish years of life on the planet Scadrial, something he's working very hard to change. It was revealed at the end of Rhythm of War that Thaidakar is in fact the Lord of Scars, better known as the Mistborn Kelsier. Since the events of Mistborn's secret history, we know he's now a sliver of the Shard Preservation and a cognitive shadow. Brandon has stated that the reason Kelsier can't world hop off of Scadrial is due to the way that he died and the level of investiture involved in his passing. Through a network of Seons and his crew, Thaidakar has still been able to make a large impact on Roshar. We know that he had been working against the Sons of Honor while they still had members. Thanks, Shallan. Or, Radiant? We also know that he had a more personal, working relationship with Gavilar, as the king thought Thaidakar was the one who had sent Szeth to kill him. Thaidakar is quite interested in the Heralds, as they share a similar fate to him. All of them are cognitive shadows, which prevent them from world hopping. We find this out from the Herald Kalak, as he's been trying to flee the Ghostbloods by escaping Roshar, but he, much like Kelsier, is trapped on his home world. The reason Thaidakar currently has the Ghostbloods chasing down Kalak, a previous member of the Sons of Honor, is that Kalak believes that Ba-Ado-Mishram is the reason for the Deadeye spread, and Thaidakar believes his knowledge will help in some way. Thaidakar is also likely afraid of the insanity that he has seen the Heralds succumb to, and seeing that they have been around much, much longer than him, he probably wants to avoid this reality as much as possible. We know that Kelsier did the right thing by giving up the Shard of Preservation for the good of his home, but we don't think he would do the same with Honor. We've theorized here at Lightcallers that Kelsier may be trying to reforge the Shard of Honor and become its vessel. If that's true, who knows what the old thief would use that power for?
Only loyalty and power are relevant, for morality is as ephemeral as the changing weather. It depends on the angle from which you view it.
To know where Mraize is at any given point would defeat the whole purpose of the character. Mraize works under Yatel, the elusive leader of the Rosharan Ghostbloods. The last time we saw him was when Shallan communicated with him through Sion Ele. After Shallan decided to quit the Ghostbloods, Mraize was not happy, and this likely means that he'll be hunting her going forward. Now, how dangerous is Mraize? Well, if being a high-ranking member of a secret Cosmere-wide organization whose express purpose is gaining access to magic and information from other planets wasn't enough, he's now potentially a surge binder. Anat, one of the Unmade, sent a corrupted Spren to Mraize's crew due to a deal with Shallan. Depending on who the Spren bonded, this would give him, or one of his subordinates, access to powers similar to that of Renarin, that being 2 Radiant Surges and possibly some mysterious extra power. Pairing this with the unknown abilities his Aviator grants him, Mraize is no joke. In Wind and Truth, Mraize will likely be continuing his hunts for Kalak and Ba-Ado-Mishram, while also pursuing his personal vendetta against Shallan. We don't know what this will look like, but we do know that Mraize will continue to make impacts on the story, and likely from the shadows.
The diagram is clear. This is the purpose of its creation. We cannot beat the enemy, so instead we save whatever we can.
Taravangian's last command to his colleagues of the diagram was for them to return to Kharbranth, the one place that Odium had agreed to preserve as part of the pact the two had made with each other during the fight for Thelena. That was, of course, before Taravangian became Odium's vessel. So what now? We know that Dova, aka Batar, was dismissed before the rest of the diagram, but we aren't sure where she's gone. Malata is still with the forces of Urithiru, though her connection to Taravangian remains unknown by her peers. Adratagia and the rest likely followed Taravangian's commands and returned to Kharbranth to remain safe. According to Taravangian, the folks of the diagram are no longer needed, but we know that they'll likely remain loyal to Odium. This poses the most interesting threat in the Herald Batar and the Dustbringer Malata. With the Contest of Champions, the two may use their positions and powers to harm Dalinar and company for Taravangian's benefit.
Yes, I look forward to ruling the humans nearly as much as I look forward to serving you, newest Odium, who was so recently one of them. You understand. You are the one I have been waiting to worship.
El is terrifying. We see him last with Lezian, the defeated one, and the fused forces in Kholinar, where he uses Lezian's new returned form to test the potential power of anti-void light, that very same light that Gavilar discovered right before he was assassinated by Zeth. During this process, the anti-void light destroyed the Regal's soul, killing him permanently and preventing any future returns. El handles this as any emotionless psychopath would, shrugging off the death of a thousands-year-old ally, and that's the last we hear from him. We know El's primary goal is to rule over the humans of Roshar and recondition them. He seemingly has an obsession with the humans, and his desire to preserve them, to be his subjects, was what led him to being stripped of his title and rhythms. We know that the animated Krem, formerly known as Moash, was given El's old title of Vyre, he who quiets. El doesn't seem to mind this when he's prodded, but we'll have to see how those two interact going forward. We expect El to be very connected to the Contest of Champions, and many people speculate that Taravodium will choose El to be his champion. This could be true, but due to El's formidable reputation and the fact that he replaces his carapace with metal, I think it's aluminum, he will likely be a big part of the war for territory in Roshar before the contest even starts. Maybe he'll even achieve his dream of ruling over the humans once the contest is over. All hail King El?
I find Ba-Ado-Mishram to be the most interesting of the Unmade. She is said to have been keen of mind, a high princess among the enemy forces, their commander during some of the desolations.
Who the Storms even is Ba-Ado-Mishram? Our main reference to her comes in the Oathbringer epigraphs from the excerpts of Hesi's Mythica. There are a few important things to note here. First is that Hesi is alive right now and wrote this book recently in our timeline. She's a colleague of sorts to Yasna, and her work is described by Shallan as contentious, noting that much of that work has been disputed, in spite of most of it being proven true. So what is Hesi saying here? Well, she finds Mishram to be the most interesting of the Unmade. Mishram is like a high princess to Odium, and she's acted as general of the regal forces during some of the desolations. She was the splinter that gave the singers their forms of power. These were fueled by void light instead of stormlight, and we see what those forms look like now in the Regals. When the Radiants trapped her in a gemstone, all of her singers lost their forms and became dull-minded. This was deemed as slave form, kind of similar to the Deadeye Spren. Speaking of which, remember earlier how I said Kalak thought the creation of the Deadeye Spren had something to do with Ba-Ado-Mishram? Well, we know that the Recreants happened at the end of the False Desolation, around the same time that Mishram was trapped, so there's likely a correlation. Mishram seems to be heavily involved in many of our current issues. So again we ask, who is this creature? Hesi theorizes that Mishram is one of the 9 Unmade, splinters of Odium who carry different levels of sentience and power. Now let's look at the facts. Mishram facilitated forms of power. Mishram's imprisonment also seemed to have an effect on the Spren of the Radiants who separated during the Recreants, and every Spren who broke their Radiant bond thereafter, including Testament, Myalaran, and nearly Silfrena. Okay, theory time. We don't think that Ba-Ado-Mishram is simply an Unmade. The Unmade are splinters of Odium, but the 8 that we are aware of outside of Mishram don't come close to her reported power. We think that she's actually a hybrid splinter of both Odium and Honor, much like the sibling is a hybrid splinter of Honor and Cultivation. The first thing that leads us to this conclusion was the order of the Bondsmiths. We know that there have only been 3 Bondsmiths at any given time, and the 3rd Bondsmith Spren is currently unknown. Almost everybody assumes that this Spren is the Night Watcher, but why? The 2 Spren that can make a Bondsmith are the Sibling, a hybrid splinter of Honor and Cultivation, and the Stormfather, a splinter of just Honor. Wouldn't it make sense that the 3rd Bondsmith Spren was actually a hybrid splinter of Honor and Odium this whole time? Now you might be wondering, why would Honor and Odium create a splinter together? There could be many reasons. Maybe she was originally a splinter of Honor that was then corrupted by Odium. Maybe she was a conceptual Spren, born out of the war between Odium and Honor. Maybe her creation was part of the reason Odium became the god of the singers and Honor the god of men. All of this is speculation to be sure, but the most convincing piece of evidence to us is the revelation of War Light at the end of Rhythm of War. This light is made from the combination of Stormlight and Void Light, proving that Honor and Odium are not opposites, but can combine together to devastating effect. Ba-Ado-Mishram is understood to be a great general of Odium's army, and also led the Regals in the False Desolation. Nobody knows how she used Void Light to give the singers forms of power, and we believe that she didn't. She used War Light. Isn't it convenient that this event happened thousands of years after Odium and the Fused left Roshar and the Heralds abandoned their fight? This was also thousands of years before Odium's return in the True Desolation, meaning nobody has had any knowledge on how Mishram did what she did. This would connect nicely to the fact that she is somewhat responsible for the Regals becoming dull and the Radiant Spren becoming Deadeyes, because the host of Warlight and a splinter of Honor was trapped. We believe that for a Spren to create a bondsmith, they must be bonded to a splinter of honor. Not just any splinter. Honor is the shard of bonds and oaths, and a pure splinter of cultivation making a bondsmith doesn't feel right to us. If we're idiots, let us know in the comments below, but if we end up being right about this, we deserve a subscribe.
Yes, Dalinar set himself up to fail. I can beat him.
Taravangian is everywhere, and he is nowhere. He's a god now, and that should terrify you. Taravodium, as we like to call him, will have a split personality for a short time here. We know that the man inside wants to control the power and make everything right. We also know that the intent of the shard is to kill every other shard. These could have some overlap, but not likely. All of this will require Taravangian to be able to leave Roshar, which means winning the Contest of Champions against Dalinar. We aren't 100% sure of who Taravangian's champion will be, but we probably know how they're gonna win. The heroes of our story don't know who they are even fighting. We know that Taravodium has taken specific steps to hide his identity from Hoid. We also know that deception and sabotage were a huge part of his work in fulfilling the diagram. Odium was bested by Dalinar many times, but Dalinar never beat Taravangian. We also know that Cultivation is working with Taravodium to help him control his power. And remember, Cultivation wants things to progress. She doesn't pick sides. We learn this when Dalinar meets the Night Watcher and Oathbringer. Cultivation wants change, and Taravodium is likely her best avenue for that.
Everyone you love, everyone you think you can protect, they're all gonna die anyway. There's nothing you can do about it.
He who quiets, Vyre, Moash, loser. Yep, that's right. Moash finally lost! The last time we saw Moash, he had his connection to Odium destroyed by Navani and the sibling, where he was subsequently flooded with all the emotion that Odium had held back from him. Among these emotions, he felt hatred and guilt for himself for what he did to Teft. After retreating into the mountains, Vyre fell and broke his spine before being rescued and healed by a group of fused. Interestingly enough, the healing he was given did not repair the blindness, possibly because his connection to Odium was severed. Though he's now incapacitated, he still holds Jezrien's honor blade, something we should not soon forget. We know that Vyre's final moments will come with much fanfare and hopefully an epic duel with Kaladin, but something tells us that won't happen soon. We may see the end of Vyre in Book 5, but I would count on him sticking around until Era 2. Maybe Taravodium has something big yet planned for the old bridge man. So yeah, the bad guys kind of have the upper hand here. Between shady world hoppers, former allies, and a corrupt king become god, Dalinar's roster looks like a Little League team. We haven't mentioned every villain here, and if you're curious about what's going on with Nael and Ishar, we have a video about all the heralds linked below. We know a lot will happen in Wind and Truce, but don't expect all these villains to meet their bitter end, or even show up for that matter. We will see what happens this December. Cola?